Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this presentation by Prescription Justice about our new Congressional report card on drug prices. My name is Gabriel Levitt, and I'm the founder and president of Prescription Justice. You may also know me as co-founder of PharmacyChecker.com. Today, you'll also be hearing from Jody Dart, Executive Director of Prescription Justice. Also joining us for the live Q&A following our presentation will be Michael Walker, Managing Partner and Political Data Consultant at Data Made Useful. Michael was responsible for pulling together the political data, the methodology number crunching, and with others at Data Made Useful, integrating our findings onto the website at prescriptionjustice.org, which is where you'll find the grades. So first, a little bit about us. Prescription Justice is a 501c4 bipartisan nonprofit organization with the singular mission to end what we view as a crisis of high drug prices in America. Our goal is simple: to get Congress to pass legislation that will make prescription drugs affordable for all Americans, regardless of their income and wealth. To do this, we must hold our elected officials accountable for the crisis of high prescription drug prices. They have the power to change the situation, but have not done so. Many of you are familiar with the congressional scorecards of organizations such as Planned Parenthood, the ACLU, or on the other side of the political fence, the NRA and Club for Growth. Now, we have graded members of Congress on the issue of drug prices and are excited about presenting our findings. We believe that this grade can be used as an important tool to influence voters who care about this issue. This presentation is dedicated to explaining how we graded members of Congress on drug prices and recommending that the grades be used as advocacy and political campaign tools. We have grades for both the House and the Senate, but this presentation will focus mostly on the House. The grading methodologies are very similar, with important differences to reflect unique legislative factors of the respective chambers. Before jumping in, I want to bring up, but not get bogged down in discussing the global pandemic. Sadly, COVID-19 throws gasoline on a raging inferno of high drug prices. Lots of healthcare-related organizations are importantly pivoting to address COVID-19. Prescription Justice believes that the federal government should ensure that all Americans, regardless of their ability to pay, have equal access to all COVID-19 treatments and vaccines. But our plan is to stay focused on advancing legislation and policies to make drugs affordable as soon as possible and sustainable for the long term. The goal of congressional scorecards is, of course, to hold members of Congress accountable. What's the challenge when it comes to doing this for drug prices? We asked ourselves, how do members of Congress act or not act to lower drug prices? How do we grade them? Traditionally, congressional scorecards reflect voting records, right? About its scorecard, for example, Planned Parenthood states the scores are based on votes on key legislation related to women's health care and rights. Club for Growth states, at the end of the year, the Club for Growth Foundation conducts a study of how members of Congress voted on key issues. Here's the problem when it comes to drug prices. Votes on drug prices are a rare exception because Big Pharma prevents them from happening through lobbying and campaign contributions. So we had to work harder. We identified multiple factors to derive a drug prices grade. The decision was both one of necessity, but also of substance. The four factors we use to grade are: 1, votes; 2, sponsorship and co-sponsorship of bills to lower drug prices; 3, campaign contributions from drug manufacturers; and 4, soft data identified as drug price policies promoted on congressional websites. To determine a score, point values are assigned to our four factors. with a perfect score being 100. Based on that score, we assign a grade, one that is similar to common school grades. A score of 95 is an A. A score of 55 is an F. However, as you'll see, there are curves and caveats that bend the fundamental methodology, particularly for members in the House who voted consistently for lowering drug prices when the opportunity allowed. I'll explain more below. Speaking of votes, in our methodology, congressional voting is assigned the greatest number of points because, in the final analysis, it is lawmaking that will actually stop the price gouging and endless price increases from the drug companies. My skin crawls when I read yet another story asking the question, will the drug companies be shamed into lowering or controlling their own drug prices? You have to have a capacity for shame for that to happen. Fundamentally, we need new laws. While there were no votes in the Senate to speak of last year on drug prices, there were some votes in the House, and one of them a big one. Two other votes were dedicated to drug prices, and one was a bipartisan Medicaid bill that included drug cost control measures for Part B of Medicare, which actually passed and became law. First, H.R. 3, the Elijah Cummings Lower Drug Costs Now Act, was worth 15 points. Drug price negotiations, new rebate requirements, caps on out-of-pocket spending on drugs, you name it, H.R. 3 had it. You got a lot of points for voting for it. H.R. 987, Strengthening Health and Lowering Prescription Drug Costs Act, was worth 7.5 points. This act mostly focused on health insurance, but it brought to the table regulatory reforms to bring generic drugs to market faster by ending patent games by both generic and brand name drug manufacturers. Finally, H.R. 3253, Sustaining Excellence in Medicaid Act, was also worth 7.5 points. This bill actually passed, and it contained one gem to realign incentives toward lowering drug costs in Part B of Medicare. We need way more than that, but each base hit is a chink in the armor of Big Pharma and a step closer to drug price sanity. Members of Congress should be rewarded for taking the initiative to sponsor and co-sponsor bills that will end the crisis of high drug prices. So, members received points for sponsoring or co-sponsoring such bills. There were many bills introduced to lower drug prices that never came to a vote. Some members sponsored or co-sponsored almost all of those bills, others none. This factor helps explain which members are most committed to and active on the issue of lowering drug prices. Not all policies are equal. We identified the range of policy categories relating to drug prices. We weighted them on our impact assessment. For example, passing a law requiring Medicare to negotiate drug prices would most forcefully bring down the price of patented brand name drugs. Drug price negotiation bills were weighted heaviest. Bills that focused on increasing competition received a weight of 6, the lightest. We identified 48 bills related to these categories. Sponsoring a bill is worth 2 points, co-sponsoring is worth 1 point. Adding a little bit of our Senate research here, here's a few examples of sponsored and co-sponsored bills used for the scores in both chambers. S99, Medicare Drug Price Negotiation Act, introduced by Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont. S3384, Lowering Prescription Drug Prices for America's Seniors and Families Act, introduced by Senator Martha McSally, Republican, Arizona. H.R. 1344, Competitive Drugs Act of 2019, Representative Lloyd Doggett, Democrat of Texas. H.R. 3805, the Prescription Drug Rebate Reform Act of 2019, Representative Mike Gallagher, Republican of Wisconsin. Please make note that 2 of these bills are sponsored by Democrats and 2 by Republicans. There are these and 44 other bills were used to score this factor. Let's face it, one of the biggest obstacles to bringing about serious legislative and regulatory reforms to lower drug prices is money in politics. The more money a candidate receives from the pharmaceutical industry, the more likely they are to vote in favor of that industry. There's no ambiguity here. We want to punish members of Congress for taking money from big pharma. However, we had to do this right and be fair about it. We're real proud of this one. Members were scored on campaign contributions from pharmaceutical companies, not just on the total number, but 1, based on the amounts received proportionate to contributions from other sources, and 2, relative to other members. The source data for contributions is from the Center for Responsive Politics, also known as opensecrets.org. In other words, if members A and B received $50,000 from drug companies, but that $50,000 represented 20% of member A's total contributions versus 10% for member B, then A would get fewer points than B for this category. Sometimes members don't get around to co-sponsoring bills they like. Others might not even vote for bills that contain some policies they strongly support. Why? Because the bill might enact other policies that they do not support, or certain bills may not go far enough in support of a certain policy, and a member places a protest vote against it. In considering the above and enriching our scorecard, we wanted to find other ways to reward members for going on the record. Going on the record helps build momentum in favor of a policy. Many members list the legislative and policy issues of greatest importance to them on their websites. We reviewed all of them for policy positions related to lowering drug prices. Points were allocated where support for policies to lower drug prices were articulated on our 5 policy categories: drug price negotiations, importation, generic availability, capping prices, preventing price gouging, and 5, increasing competition. Digging into the methodology calculations here, as a reminder, there are 4 scoring factors. Each factor is assigned a number of points that add up to 100 points. Votes, 30 points. Bill sponsorships and co-sponsorships, 25 points. Pharma campaign dollars, 25 points. Soft data, 20 points. This is where the simplicity ends. To explain all the research and methodological details we employed, the data collection, raw scoring, statistical weighting, and curves for each individual factor is beyond the scope of this presentation. Interested parties can and should reach out to Prescription Justice for a deeper dive. The methodologies are available on our website, but here's an overview. After scoring each factor, we derived a raw total high score, which ended up being 95. 30 points for votes, 25 points for sponsorships and co-sponsorships, 20 points for pharma campaign dollars, and 20 points for soft data. That's 95 points. We adjusted that to a 100-point scale. In other words, we divided that high score by 95 to get a 1, or 100%. Then we divided all the other scores by 95 to get percentages. You must be dying to know who got the high score. Stay tuned. The result of these calculations led to seemingly dismal scores, unfair ones that actually did not reflect reality for many of the members receiving them. In other words, if it were left right there, there would have been a handful of A's and then mostly D's and F's. That can't work. Yes, we're grading members based directly on their actions on drug prices, but also how they did relative to their peers. So we applied a square root curve, also referred to as a Texas curve. Texas curves bring grades that are unfairly low up higher. Finally, we applied what we called the minimum grade adjustment for voting records curve. If members voted yes to all three bills for that factor, then they received a minimum grade of a B-. Getting to the letter grade is kind of just like in school. A's are in the 90s, B's in the 80s, C's in the 70s, D's in the 60s. Under that, you get an F. All right, here's some final data in a spreadsheet form. Remember that high score mentioned earlier? It's that top score. It's Representative Jan Schakowsky from Illinois, who received an A+. Recall that her score was a 95. Isn't that an A, not an A+? No, because there's a curve. The adjustment factor brought her up to 0.9999, which you'll just have to accept means 100% here. Notice that rising star, super progressive Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez only gets a B? Well, she voted the right way, and she didn't take a lot of money from drug companies, but she took some. She didn't co-sponsor a bunch of drug price bills, and her website wasn't all that vocal on the issue. Democrat Seth Moulton from Massachusetts and Republican Doug Collins of Georgia received failing grades. I'm not picking on them. I don't really know them that well. While Seth Moulton voted for H.R. 3, that's good, he took quite a lot of money from pharma. He said nothing about drug prices on his website, and he didn't sponsor or co-sponsor any drug price bills. For Representative Collins, you know, he's running for Senate in Georgia. Maybe we need to get the word out about his failing grade to the people of Georgia. I have to tell you all, this is a tough grade. If prescription justice were a teacher or professor, we would not be popular with the students. And we won't be popular with most members of Congress. Even with that curve, the grades were pretty bad. It's up to all of us to use this grade to motivate members to get busier on drug prices. There were 31 A's, 220 B's, 42 C's, 91 D's, and 146 failing grades. To quickly walk you through 3 grades, just to look at their pictures here, why exactly did Representative Jan Schakowsky receive the highest grade? Well, for one, she voted perfectly. 2, she sponsored and co-sponsored an incredible number of bills on drug prices. 3, her website focused extensively on drug prices. And 4, she took very little money from Big Pharma. But here's why her raw score wasn't perfect, because she took a little bit of money from Big Pharma. Representative Fred Upton, Republican of Michigan, he failed because he was the polar opposite of Representative Jan Schakowsky on all of those factors. You see that F for Speaker Pelosi? Can you believe she got an F? How can that be? She played a role in getting H.R. 3 passed, right? Well, she may have gotten it to the floor, but surprisingly, she didn't vote for it. She did not co-sponsor any bills on drug prices. She took a bunch of money from drug companies, and she was silent about drug prices on her website. Now, we know that party leadership is sometimes different than regular members, forgoing sponsoring and co-sponsoring bills, but where were her votes? Like I said, this is a tough grade. The grade should most accurately reflect the performance of members of Congress in terms of actions to change the law to lower drug prices. Some members are simply not focused on drug prices as much as others, but they will come through with the exact votes needed to win victories. So when it comes to people who voted for all 3 bills in the House, again, that's why we gave them a minimum grade of B-. With other scorecards, such members would have received an A. hey, they voted the right way. With prescription justice, they have to show more commitment. But if they vote for lowering drug prices, they should end up with a decent grade. Since its members have six-year terms, the Senate methodology tried to reflect a longer timeline in the House, where terms are only 2 years. In researching soft data, we found that many senators had recently revised their websites to focus on COVID-19, downplaying policy positions on drug prices that we saw on their websites previously, which really depressed the raw scores of people who are really on board on drug prices. To adjust for this unwarranted deflation, we added a 15-point curve up for every senator's raw score. Our mission is not just one of reporting, but of advocacy. To motivate members to do better and get them on the record, we created a questionnaire, which we call the Prescription Justice Pledge. The pledge is based on the policy priorities of prescription justice, which advocate for drug price negotiations, ending patent games, reforming importation laws to allow parallel imports, and expressly allowing individuals to import for personal use as a lifeline if they need it. Members of Congress can improve their grades by filling out the Prescription Justice Questionnaire. For each yes answer, members will increase their raw scores by 2 points. Those members who fill out every question with a yes answer will move up a full grade and are considered prescription justice pledgers. Candidate challengers can also go on the record filling out the questionnaire. And now I am honored to turn this over to our executive director, Jody Dart, to talk about how the grade can be used.
Thank you, Gabe. The grade can be used to name and shame, laud and applaud members of Congress. Those with high grades will have bragging rights and can use the grades to communicate with their voters or in campaign ads. Campaigns can also highlight the poor grades earned by competitors. Advocacy groups focused on lowering drug prices can use the card to highlight good and bad grades. If you're part of an advocacy network or community organization, please share it with the group and even consider devoting part of a meeting to discussing the Prescription Justice Report Card. Media can also use this tool when writing stories about prescription drug prices and how various candidates stack up on this issue. Voters can easily share grades using social media with their networks. Right now, I'm going to take a moment to show you the share feature using the example of Senator Dick Durbin. On our homepage, click on the link that says See Congressional Report Card. This will take you to the Report Card Overview page. Click to see the Congressional Report Card. Now you'll be on the main page where you can search by either chamber or you can enter the name of your member of Congress in the search box. This will bring up their profile page. And from there, you can share the grade on one or all of the, using one of the or all of the social share icons, including Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and email. Transparency is the first step to accountability, and sharing the report card on social media is the easiest way for citizen activists, advocacy groups, and voters to effectively shine a light on the actions of members of Congress on drug prices. When posting to social media, be sure to tag the member of Congress, their opponent, if any, and add the appropriate hashtags to leverage visibility of the report card grade. As you can see in this sample, my posting of my Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois, we've tagged the senator as well as used the hashtag drug prices. We'd also love it if you could tag prescription justice, just so we can keep track of our social shares. If your congressperson scored poorly, help them succeed on the next prescription justice report card. After posting their grades to social media, we encourage you to call or email their office, inform them of the congress member's grade, and share your concerns with them. Let them know that you'll be tracking their actions on drug prices in the future. You can also encourage them to champion policies and legislation that will help lower drug prices. And you can also let them know about the opportunity to raise their grade by completing the prescription justice questionnaire. On the flip side, if your congressperson scored well on the prescription justice report card, why not celebrate them? After posting their grade on social media, call or email their office and congratulate the Congress member on their grade and thank them for their leadership and their hard work to lower drug prices for Americans. This is a really great bragging point that they can use in their campaign materials. And if they haven't already done so, please encourage them to complete the prescription justice questionnaire. And if you're really passionate, one thing you can also do is write letters to the editor of your local newspaper or even your community websites, making people aware of Congress members' prescription drug price score. Thank you.
So to recap, Prescription Justice is proud to offer this new tool to provide a clear and carefully considered assessment of actions by members of Congress to lower drug prices, one that can guide voters' choices at the ballot box this November and in years to come until we've ended the crisis of high drug prices. And now we would like to open it up for your questions. Please type them into the Zoom dialog box. Thank you.